The night air was thick with tension as Emma sat alone on the cold park bench, the city lights flickering behind her like distant stars indifferent to her pain. She had just overheard the devastating truth. Her boyfriend, Mark, had left her not for a stranger, but for her best friend, Claire. The betrayal felt like a jagged knife, twisting deep inside her chest. Emma's mind raced, torn between disbelief and the burning sting of heartbreak. "How could they?" she whispered into the night, voice trembling. The street lamps cast long shadows that seemed to echo her loneliness. Every step she took away from that bench felt heavier, her world tilting off its axis. Yet beneath the hurt, a spark of resolve flickered. She wouldn't be the victim in this story. The cold wind tugged at her coat as she stood, eyes steeling, ready to face the chaos ahead. This was only the beginning. Emma's mind replayed every moment leading up to this betrayal like a broken record. Mark had seemed perfect, charming, attentive, and devoted. Claire was her closest friend since college, the one who'd held her secrets and dreams. Yet, behind the laughter and shared coffees, a secret had festered and grown. Emma remembered the day Claire started acting distant, the subtle changes in their friendship that she had ignored. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, inevitable and heartbreaking. Now, standing at the edge of her shattered world, Emma realized she needed to confront both Mark and Claire. This wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about reclaiming her dignity and finding out why. The night was still young, but Emma's resolve was burning fiercely. She whispered to herself, "I will not let this break me." Emma's first call was to Mark's phone. She rehearsed what to say 1,000 times, but found only silence when he picked up. His voice was cold, unfamiliar. No apologies, no regret. "It's over," he said simply. "I'm with Claire now." Each word crashed over her like a wave. She hung up, anger and despair swirling inside her. Next, she tried Claire, who avoided her calls and texts, only replying hours later with vague excuses. Emma's heart sank deeper. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was personal, a fracture in everything she believed about friendship and trust. But beneath the rubble of hurt, a quiet voice urged her on. To face the truth, no matter how painful. The following morning, Emma stood in front of a mirror, staring at her reflection as if seeing a stranger. The woman looking back was bruised but not broken. Her eyes, rimmed with tiredness, burned with new determination. "This isn't how my story ends," she told herself firmly. She wiped away a stray tear and grabbed her phone, drafting a message to a close friend for support. The day ahead was daunting. Confrontations, revelations, and perhaps closure. But Emma was ready. She dressed carefully, choosing strength over sorrow, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. The sunlight was harsh but honest, much like the truth she was about to face. Emma arrived at the coffee shop where she and Claire had shared countless memories. The place was buzzing with morning rush, but all Emma could feel was the weight of what was to come. She spotted Claire at a corner table, laughing with Mark. For a fleeting moment, Emma's breath caught in her throat, then the surge of resolve returned. She walked over, her steps steady despite the storm inside. Claire looked up, surprise flickering across her face before it hardened. Emma sat down, voice steady but edged with pain. "We need to talk. This ends today." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension as the past and present collided in one charged moment. Jonathan sat alone in the dimly lit study, the weight of Claire's words crushing his chest. His fingers traced the rim of an untouched coffee cup as memories of laughter and love flickered through his mind, like a fading film. The silence was suffocating, thick with the unsaid. He whispered, "How did we get here?" His mind raced through every argument, every cold glance, searching for where the cracks began. The house felt emptier than ever, shadows stretching long across the room as the afternoon sun slipped behind clouds. Despite the pain, a spark of determination kindled within him. He would fight for what was left, even if it meant facing the truth about their broken marriage. Claire retreated to their bedroom, the walls closing in as doubt crept in. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching a faded photo of their wedding day, the smiles frozen in happier times. Was love enough? She wondered aloud. The weight of loneliness pressed hard against her chest. Despite the pain, a stubborn resolve kept her moving forward. She had tried to save their marriage, but the silence and neglect had become unbearable. The sun outside shone brightly, mocking the darkness she felt inside. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends offering support, but the road ahead felt lonely and uncertain. Still, she breathed deeply, preparing herself for the storm her decision would unleash. Jonathan stood by the window, watching the world outside move on, oblivious to his turmoil. Neighbors smiled and waved, unaware of the fracture hidden behind his calm facade. He clenched his jaw, fists tightening at his sides. "I can't lose her," he said quietly. Yet the reality was harsh. The divorce papers loomed like a dark storm cloud, threatening to engulf everything they had built. Memories played like a silent movie. Vacations, birthdays, whispered promises, now shards of what once was. He realized he had to confront Claire, to fight or accept the inevitable. The sky outside darkened with gathering clouds, mirroring the storm inside him. Claire paced the living room again, rehearsing what she would say if Jonathan asked for a second chance. The silence echoed louder than any words. Her heart ached with conflicting emotions. Grief, relief, fear, and hope. "Is this the end or a new beginning?" she questioned. The weight of her choice settled like a stone, yet a part of her still longed for reconciliation. She glanced at the clock, each tick marking the seconds until their confrontation. Outside, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting hopeful rays across the hardwood floor. The house was a battleground of memories, love, and pain. Claire steeled herself for the inevitable conversation that would change everything. Jonathan's phone buzzed again. It was Claire. Nah. The words they exchanged were measured but heavy with unspoken pain. "We need to face this," she said firmly. Jonathan nodded silently, knowing the fight was just beginning. They agreed to meet that evening, the air thick with anticipation. Each prepared themselves for the emotional reckoning ahead, understanding that this conversation could either close the door or open a fragile path forward. The sky outside darkened as dusk approached, shadows creeping across the walls like silent witnesses to their unraveling story. Their lives were on the precipice, balanced between destruction and hope. The evening was heavy with silence as Jonathan and Claire met in the living room, the soft glow of the table lamp casting long shadows on their tired faces. Neither spoke at first, the weight of years pressing between them like an invisible wall. Jonathan finally broke the silence, his voice low but steady. "We've drifted so far apart. How did it come to this?" Claire looked away, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know any more," she confessed quietly. They spoke of memories once bright, but now dimmed by neglect and misunderstanding. Each word was a fragile step on uncertain ground. Despite the pain, a faint hope flickered. Could this conversation heal, or was it the final chapter? Claire shared her feelings of isolation, the loneliness that had crept in despite their shared home. Jonathan listened, his heart aching at her words. He admitted his own faults, long work hours, silent withdrawals, the walls had built. "I never meant for us to end up like this," he said. They reminisced about better days, realizing how small neglect had grown into a chasm. Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she whispered, "I wanted us to fight for each other." Jonathan reached out tentatively, their hands brushing, a small gesture heavy with meaning. The night hung between them, fragile yet charged with the possibility of reconciliation or final farewell. Jonathan stood and paced slowly, frustration mingling with regret. "We made mistakes, Claire, but we still have time," he insisted, voice trembling with hope. Claire remained seated, torn between despair and the faintest glimmer of belief. She questioned whether they could rebuild trust, wondering if the scars were too deep. "Can love really fix what's broken?" she asked, voice barely audible. Jonathan sat beside her, offering a tentative smile. It has to. For us, for the kids. The room felt heavy with unspoken truths and promises. Outside, the night deepened, stars hidden behind clouds as if the universe held its breath for their fate. Claire finally rose, walking to the window, gazing out at the quiet street bathed in moonlight. She spoke softly. "I'm scared, Jonathan. Scared that we'll just hurt each other more." Jonathan joined her, placing a hand gently on her back. "We've hurt already, Claire, but maybe it's time to try again." The cool night air slipped through the slightly open window, carrying a whisper of hope. They stood together, two fractured souls searching for a fragile path forward. In that moment, time seemed to pause, the weight of their history balanced with the faint promise of renewal. They returned to the sofa, closer now, the silence less heavy, more reflective. Claire reached out, taking Jonathan's hand in hers. "We'll need time," she said, voice steady but cautious. Jonathan nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Whatever it takes." They understood the road ahead would be difficult, filled with hard conversations and healing. But in that quiet living room, under the dim lamp's glow, a fragile thread of hope began to weave between them. The night outside was dark and uncertain, but inside, two hearts dared to believe in a new beginning, no matter how fragile or uncertain. Morning light spilled softly through the curtains as Claire stood in the kitchen, preparing coffee with a distracted air. The house was quiet, yet the tension from last night lingered like a heavy fog. She reflected on their conversation, the fragile hope Jonathan offered versus the uncertainty gnawing at her. "Can we really rebuild this?" she wondered aloud, staring into the steaming mug. The years of silence, the wounds hidden beneath polite smiles, weighed on her. Yet beneath the doubt was a stubborn flicker of belief. She knew the path ahead was steep, but maybe this was the first step toward healing. The air was thick with unspoken questions as the sun slowly climbed, promising a new day, but nothing felt certain. Jonathan sat at the breakfast table, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly, eyes distant yet determined. He replayed their late-night conversation, the cracks in their marriage suddenly clearer but not insurmountable. His mind raced with plans and promises. This isn't the end, he thought, it's a beginning we almost missed. Yet he knew words alone wouldn't mend years of hurt. Actions had to follow. He glanced toward the door, waiting for Claire to join him. The silence between them was fragile but filled with potential. Outside, birds chirped, and the world seemed oblivious to the private storm unfolding inside the house. For the first time in weeks, Jonathan felt a cautious optimism take root. Claire joined Jonathan at the table, the distance between them measured in silence more than steps. Their eyes met, tentative but searching. "We have a lot to fix," Claire said softly, voice barely above a whisper. Jonathan nodded, reaching across the table to take her hand, a small gesture heavy with meaning. Both knew rebuilding trust would be slow, requiring patience and honesty. The children's laughter echoed faintly from another room, reminding them of what was at stake. Despite the fragile peace, the shadows of doubt still lurked. But in that quiet morning moment, they chose to face the uncertainty together. The day stretched ahead, fragile yet full of possibility. Later, Jonathan stepped outside into the brisk morning air, drawing a deep breath. The garden was quiet, dew glistening on the grass and petals. He thought about the challenges ahead, apologies to be made, wounds to heal, futures to rebuild. His heart pounded with the mix of fear and determination. "I will fight for us," he promised quietly, fists clenched at his sides. The neighborhood was waking slowly. A dog barked in the distance, and leaves rustled softly in the breeze. Nature's calm contrasted sharply with his turmoil, reminding him that life would go on, with or without their love. But Jonathan chose to believe it could go on with it too. Claire sat quietly in the living room, phone in hand, scrolling through old messages and photos. A wave of nostalgia washed over her, mingling with fresh resolve. She decided to seek counseling, hoping a neutral ground could help them unravel years of hurt. "This isn't just about us anymore," she thought, eyes moist but determined. The clock ticked steadily as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor. She knew this road would be hard and uncertain, but her heart dared to hope. With a deep breath, she picked up the phone to make the call that might change everything. The fragile threads of their future began to weave through the quiet house once more. The counseling room was quiet, except for the ticking clock and soft rustling of papers. Jonathan and Claire sat across from the therapist, both nervous but willing. Claire's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "I never imagined we'd come to this, but I want to try." Jonathan nodded, his voice steady though tinged with vulnerability. "We've been lost, but maybe this can guide us back." The therapist listened, gently encouraging honesty and openness. The first steps were tentative, like stepping onto thin ice. Yet beneath the fear, a fragile hope glimmered, a chance to rebuild not just their marriage but themselves. The room held a delicate balance between past wounds and future promises. Weeks passed with slow progress. Therapy sessions peeled back layers of resentment and pain. Claire revealed her feelings of abandonment. Jonathan admitted his fear of confrontation. They learned to listen without judgment, discovering small moments of connection amid the cracks. One afternoon after a session, Claire whispered, "I feel like we're finally seeing each other again." Jonathan smiled, the first genuine one in weeks. "Maybe we're not lost after all." The road was far from smooth. Old habits clung stubbornly, but the couple faced their challenges with renewed commitment. The house, once heavy with silence, began to echo softly with tentative laughter. At home, Jonathan surprised Claire with a small gesture, a framed photo of their wedding day placed on the mantel. Claire's eyes welled with tears, a smile breaking through her guarded expression. "You remembered," she said softly. Jonathan shrugged, trying to hide his own emotion. "It's start." They both understood that healing was more than words. It was actions, reminders of love buried beneath pain. That evening, as the children played nearby, the house felt lighter. For the first time in months, the walls seemed to breathe with possibility. They weren't fixed yet, but they were on the way. And sometimes that was enough. Despite the hopeful strides, old fears surfaced. One night, after a misunderstanding, Claire retreated to the bedroom, frustration tightening her chest. Jonathan followed, voice soft but urgent, "Don't shut me out." Claire's tears fell freely as she admitted, "I'm scared of losing you again." Jonathan pulled her close, whispering promises of patience and persistence. They clung to each other, fragile but united against the storms of doubt. This was no fairy tale, but real, painful and beautiful in its imperfection. Together, they faced the uncertainty, learning that love's survival demanded effort, forgiveness, and relentless hope. Months later, the couple stood hand in hand in the backyard, the evening sky painted with warm hues of sunset. They watched their children play, laughter ringing through the air. The scars remained, but so did their commitment to healing. Jonathan squeezed Claire's hand gently. "We're stronger than we thought." Claire smiled, a quiet strength in her eyes. "Together, we can face anything." The past still whispered, but the future beckoned with cautious hope. Their story was no longer defined by pain, but by resilience and a love reborn from ashes. The setting sun marked an ending, but also a new beginning. The morning sun filtered softly through the bedroom curtains as Claire awoke, her mind heavy with a restless mixture of hope and doubt. She watched Jonathan sleep peacefully beside her, unaware of the turmoil swirling inside her heart. The scars of their past still lingered, but the fragile thread of reconciliation had begun to weave its way through their lives. Claire whispered softly, "We've come so far, yet the journey feels endless." She touched his hand gently, a silent promise to keep trying. The house was quiet, filled with the tender weight of possibility. Outside, birds chirped in the crisp air, signaling a new day, a fresh chance to heal. Jonathan rose early, stepping into the kitchen with quiet determination. He brewed coffee, the rich aroma filling the air, grounding him in the moment. He reflected on the recent progress, small victories shadowed by old fears. Every day counts, he thought, pouring 2 cups. The house was still asleep, peaceful yet fragile, mirroring his cautious optimism. He hoped Claire would join him soon, sharing these simple moments, felt like reclaiming lost pieces of their life together. Outside, the sun climbed higher, warming the crisp morning, while Jonathan prepared himself for the challenges yet to come with a steady heart and open mind. Claire joined Jonathan at the kitchen table, the morning light casting gentle shadows across their faces. They shared quiet conversation, each word deliberate, bridging the gaps left by silence. Claire admitted her lingering fears, but also her commitment to their future. Jonathan listened intently, his gaze steady and reassuring. "We're not perfect," he said softly, "but we're trying." The children's laughter echoed faintly from the next room, a reminder of what held them together. The moment was fragile but meaningful, a tentative step forward on a long road. Together, they sipped coffee, savoring the warmth and the fragile hope rising between them. Later that day, Jonathan and Claire took a walk through their neighborhood park, the crisp autumn air filled with rustling leaves and golden light. Their hands brushed occasionally, tentative yet comforting. They spoke of dreams once shared, and new hopes cautiously nurtured. "We've been through darkness," Claire said, "but maybe the light is closer than we think." Jonathan nodded, squeezing her hand gently. The world around them seemed to hold its breath as two fractured souls searched for healing amid the quiet beauty of falling leaves. It was a moment of fragile peace, neither fully healed nor broken, simply human. As twilight descended, they returned home, the sky painted in deep purples and blues. The house welcomed them with familiar warmth and quiet comfort. Sitting together on the couch, wrapped in a soft blanket, they reflected on the day's small victories and remaining uncertainties. Claire rested her head on Jonathan's shoulder, finding solace in his steady presence. "We're still writing our story," she murmured. Jonathan kissed her forehead gently. "And this chapter feels hopeful." The past whispered in shadows, but the present glowed with fragile promise. Together, they embraced the unknown, choosing love over fear for one more day. The courtroom was hushed, tension thick, as Jonathan and Claire sat side by side, their hands resting lightly on the polished wood bench. The final hearing for their divorce had arrived, a moment weighted with years of love, pain, and unresolved questions. Jonathan's voice broke the silence softly. "This isn't just an ending. It's a new understanding." Claire's eyes shimmered with both sorrow and acceptance, reflecting a shared journey now at its legal close. The judge's words echoed solemnly, reminding them that the decree marked a chapter's end, but not the story itself. Behind the formality lay a fragile peace, a quiet acknowledgement of healing that had already begun in their hearts. Stepping outside into the bright morning sun, Jonathan and Claire inhaled deeply, the crisp air carrying a mix of relief and uncertainty. Claire broke the silence. "We survived the hardest part." Jonathan's faint smile held promise. "Now begins the real work, rebuilding, rediscovering." Though no longer bound by marriage, they stood united by mutual respect and a shared past. Around them the city moved on, unaware yet indifferent, life continuing its relentless pace. Together, they walked forward, two people changed and strengthened by loss, their futures uncertain but their resolve clear. The past was a foundation, not a cage. Weeks later, Jonathan and Claire sat in a cozy cafe, a ritual born from necessity and tentative friendship. The air between them was lighter, filled with quiet laughter and honest conversation. Claire sipped her tea thoughtfully. "We've grown in ways we never expected." Jonathan nodded. "Sometimes endings lead to beginnings we can't foresee." Their talk shifted from past grievances to future dreams once shelved. Though no longer lovers, their bond was reshaped by respect and understanding. Outside, the world bustled on, oblivious to the quiet healing blossoming in this small sanctuary. They had found a fragile peace within change. One evening, Claire sat flipping through a worn photo album, the soft glow of a table lamp casting shadows on her face. Jonathan joined her, sitting close, sharing silent memories. "It's strange," Claire whispered, "how an ending can hold so many beginnings." They spoke candidly, forgiving what needed forgiveness and honoring what remained. The pain hadn't vanished but was softened by acceptance and grace. Their story was complicated, marked by love lost and found in new ways. In this quiet moment, they embrace the imperfect beauty of their journey, a bittersweet closure and a hopeful path forward. The final scene fades on Jonathan and Claire standing separately in their own new homes at dusk, the sky ablaze with orange and purple hues. Each carries the weight of their shared past with quiet dignity. Claire whispered, "I lost much but found myself." Jonathan looked to the horizon. "This isn't the end, but a new beginning." The screen fades as their lives continue apart, forever shaped by what they shared. The story closes not with dramatic finality, but a reflective silence, a tribute to resilience, growth, and the enduring complexity of human hearts.